All right, welcome to stage one of our 7-stage system for generating high quality business leads with LinkedIn. I know there's a lot of noise out in the market in the world of marketing and thousands of different platforms and strategies that you can go about using. So in this video, we're really going to be breaking down which strategy is going to be right for you based on your business. By the end of the video, you're going to have a very clear idea of what to focus on, how to build an effective lead generation strategy for your own specific business. More specifically, we're going to be touching on the different ways that you can go about generating leads, which one you should focus on, and a bit of a gap and strength analysis of you and your own business so you know which things to highlight and which things you need to work on. So super quick intro for anyone who hasn't seen any of the other videos in the series. My name is Ryan Caswell. I'm the founder of b2bleads.com, and we're a specialist lead gen agency for business service providers. We've sent over 10 million messages on LinkedIn across thousands of campaigns and helped hundreds of clients all over the world grow their businesses with more predictable lead generation systems and processes. So that's it. Let's get into the video and get started. So the first thing I want to talk about are the three sort of core foundational ways you can go about generating leads. And they're really broken down into three key categories. So let's say you have 3 different prospects or 3 different ideal clients. So 3 little dudes, little ladies, all potential clients. There we go. I'll give them all a bit of a face. And you got you and your business down here, and you would like all of these to become clients of yours. So the 3 different ways you can go about generating leads is outbound, inbound, and through referrals or word of mouth type marketing. If you think about, imagine it like a video game, and there's like this little bar here that needs to be built up. And we'll call this your trust meter. Essentially, in order for any of these people or any of these prospects to want to actually talk to you about your services, there's a certain amount of trust that needs to be developed. Let's say you need to get to the full 100% in order for them to want to book a call with you. Now, outbound is essentially you are reaching out to people that don't necessarily know about you yet. So you're reaching out to people. You can do this via things like LinkedIn outbound, which is what we're going to be talking about a lot in this program. You can do it through other social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook. You find people, you message them, you're reaching out to them. You can do it via calling them. You can give them a call, you can email them, you can even go out door knocking. There's a bunch of different ways you can go about generating leads through outbound, but essentially you're reaching out to them and then convincing them of the value you can provide enough to get them interested to book in for a meeting or a call to learn more about your services and eventually make the sale. Inbound, on the other hand, is really you're putting out information out there. So if we're talking about it on a digital marketing strategy or perspective, you're posting content online, you may have done some search engine marketing, SEO. Basically, people are looking for your solution and either searching for it through Google and platforms like that, or they've seen your content through the various social media platforms or review sites, and they see that content and then they say, okay, this guy looks like the person that can help me, and then they want to come to you. Inbound, outbound, and referral is, okay, so let's say you have helped a client, you've done a great job for him, he tells his friend Bob over here, and then Bob says, oh, well, that's exactly what I need, I want those results, and I'd like to work with you as well. So pretty much all your different lead generation strategies can kind of fit into one of these 3 buckets. Now, a lot of times we find people who say, you know, I get all my leads from referrals, I don't need any more lead generation. To which I say, okay, great, so you can control and grow that at your own will. At which case the conversation generally turns to, oh, okay, well, not really. So the issue with, and I'll talk a little bit about the pros and cons of each of these different things. The idea with referrals is ideally, I mean, everything would be coming in through referrals because the trust is very high. So if you've helped someone, they're telling that person that they already know and trust that they've done a good job for you. And so it's very easy to convert these types of clients. Generally, the trust is very well established and they come to you and they've pretty much already sold. You've got to do a pretty bad job to not get that sale, essentially. Inbound is similar in that they've seen your content, they've seen your marketing material, they may be getting emails from you, and essentially, like, it does take a little bit more trust in order to get, the same amount of trust, but it's not done by someone else for you. You have to do the work, you have to post like good content that gets that person actually interested in what you do and convince them that you're doing a good job. Outbound, there's a really big trust gap that needs to be closed basically in a really short period of time. So imagine you've called someone, they have no idea who you are, and like there's this big gap of trust, like who is this person and why would I want to actually talk with them or get on a phone call with them? So the downside to outbound is there's a bigger trust gap that needs to be closed. But the benefits to outbound is it's very quick and scalable way to get started. Inbound does take creating a lot of content and a lot of consistency and a lot of time. Whereas outbound, once you've developed a process and a strategy to reach out to someone, it's very repeatable. You can basically say, if I reach out to this many people and say this many things, so long as they're my target market, I'm gonna start generating leads. And so outbound is often a very powerful strategy for people who are just starting out to reach out and get in front of their target market and test out their value proposition. Inbound can be a good strategy as well. In fact, it is a very powerful strategy on its own, but where most small businesses tend to struggle is staying consistent and creating good content consistently. Because if you just post 1 or 2 pieces of content, it's really not going to do much for you. Another thing is that most small businesses are terribly inefficient at creating content and lack the economy of scale, meaning that if they have a small audience and they spend 5 hours creating a piece of content, only necessarily like 2 or 3 people see it, it just doesn't have the same amount of like scale, economy of scale, basically. So if a bigger company does it, even if they have a poorer conversion rate, their audience is already so big, so it doesn't need to convert as many people in order to pay for itself. Referrals are obviously fantastic, but as new businesses or small businesses, you don't always have that control to necessarily pump those up and down as you need it. And you need a pretty fantastic service and even a referral program in order to do that. But sometimes in order to build a really powerful service or product, in order to get people to refer you, you need more leads, and you can't necessarily get that from referrals. So outbound is what we're going to be talking a lot about in this platform, in this program, but we'll also be touching on inbound and referrals and when you can go about using these different things. But these are just a very high level overview on the different types of lead generation, and you'll start to understand where the different strategies fall into with these different categories. All right, so the big question is, which one of these strategies should you be really focusing your efforts on? All right, let's get a new piece of paper and sort of start to break this down. All right, so we got outbound, inbound, and you got referrals, word of mouth, etc. So I think the more important question here is which one you should focus on, is to really understand where you are at in your current LinkedIn lead generation journey. So I think in order to keep this simple, we could break it down into 3 different categories that you might find yourself in. So the first one being, basically, you have no way of generating leads. The second one is you have a way, but you have no control, basically. You get some leads coming in, they're coming in from referrals maybe, or maybe you post a little bit of content, they come in somewhat inconsistently, but you don't really have a lot. It's very much hope marketing, and things just come in when they do. And the other one is you do have control. You can control your lead generation, you have a pretty good system in place, and you can sort of dial things up and down as you need them. And I think you really need to decide on which category you fit in. That will really determine what you're going to want to do next. So if you have no ways of generating leads, like obviously you need some way to get leads and you need a way to get it fast. Without leads, you have no cash flow, and without cash flow, your business is going to suffer, it's going to die basically. You might have a couple of leads or a couple of clients already, but it's a really poor way to do things if you can't actually get new clients, can't grow the business, and you're really dependent on a couple of key clients. You're basically just an employee. So if you don't have any way to generate leads, I generally would say, focus in on outbound strategies like cold calling or even outbound via things like LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a really powerful strategy because it doesn't require as big a skill set, I guess, as something like cold calling would. Cold calling really puts you on the spot. It's a really powerful way to build your sales and marketing and pitching techniques. It's a really powerful way to get leads, but LinkedIn is a good way to actually build your strategy offline and then scale it up without having to necessarily put yourself out there quite as much as cold calling does. So both really powerful strategies, really good way to get in front of your key clients really quickly as well. Now, inbound is an effective strategy for like if you're posting content, but I think a lot of people are forced into creating content and posting content and trying to get leads via content too early. And I see it all the time. People feel like they need to be posting their content on these social media platforms and they just don't stay consistent and they don't see any results from it. They just find that they keeps them very busy and very little to show for it. Where inbound can help even at low volumes and when you do honestly like not a very good job is a small amount of inbound with a few good pieces of content can actually support when you reach out to people. They can see some of the content and it can help them build trust around you. But in and of itself, it's going to be a tough strategy to get working from day one unless you do a really, really good job of it. Whereas doing a fairly poor job of it can actually really help to support outbound. Also, if you don't have any way of generating leads, another really powerful strategy is, I guess this falls under word of mouth or networking, is really, well, networking. So there's a number of different platforms online that show you different business networking events. And like if you really just don't know what to do or how to get started, networking events are a great way to do that. There are a lot of other new businesses there, and it's a great way to find clients even when you're really crap at lead generation, marketing, and sales. Another really powerful advantage to networking events is even at low volume, digital marketing, you really need to get your volume up and your numbers up. But with networking events, there's this really powerful market research, I guess, benefit to it in that even at low volume, just by talking to people, you get direct feedback on how people are responding to your messaging, your value proposition, your pitch. You can see it in the glazing over of the eyeballs, essentially. So if someone is sort of pitching forward and listening and giving you their business cards, you know that what you've got is actually worthwhile. If people are just being polite, glazing over eyeballs and trying to get away from you, you know you need to do some work. So it's a really good way to get quick feedback. This is pretty much where I started when I first didn't have any idea what to do. You know, coming from engineering, very data driven, not very marketing focused, this was a great way to get started. Another thing you can do is actually find co-share spaces where a lot of businesses work. If you work with small companies and they're your target market, go into co-share spaces and offering to do talks on your topic is a great way to get clients too. The advantage being is that you're the expert in the room. Say even if there's only 10 people, you got 10 people listening to you and they're assuming that you're the expert versus everyone else just trying to sell to each other. So another really good thing is talks at co-share spaces. So these are all really, like I said, this is a video about getting started, what to do based on where you currently are. So if you have no way of generating leads, no money, these are two fantastic strategies, but outbound is a really powerful way to actually build a repeatable, more scalable system. Networking, you're in danger of spending too much time. Consider your time at least 100 an hour, 200 an hour maybe. And if you go to a networking event and you've spent 4 hours there, you've spent essentially $800. And if you don't have any leads to show for it, then you really need to assess what you're doing. Always think of your time in terms of money. And a lot of these initial strategies, when you don't have any funds, rely more on time than actual money. Whereas a lot of the inbound strategies, things like paid marketing, can actually start to scale by actually just paying for the scale, which is why a lot of businesses, small businesses, we tend to push towards outbound, because you actually need to develop the systems and processes first before you have the confidence to scale it up with actual funds. So no control over your leads, but you are getting some. I mean, referrals and word of mouth is just something that should always be, I guess, something that you're working on. You're always offering incentives for your clients to refer you. Obviously doing a good job and building trust with those clients is going to be the best way to get people to refer. But oftentimes people do need that nudge. So just asking for referrals, asking if they know anyone is half the battle. Like most times when people are getting started, they're just too scared to ask. So just ask is a powerful strategy in order to get referrals. Now, having no control but still getting referrals or lead gen, it's almost in some ways more dangerous than having no way to generate leads at all, because you can become complacent on the occasional referral that pops in and it just keeps you going alive, but it lets you become complacent without having any control. And I guess this is where a lot of our clients come from, is that they have referral and word of mouth, and then all of a sudden something happens and these things dry up, and all of a sudden it's like this big desperate push to get leads fast and get sales fast. And it's not always possible to do. Like it takes time to nurture, especially for long sales cycles and big deal sizes. So if you're at this point, you really need to develop some way to develop a strategy for generating leads. Now, the fact that you do have cash flow coming in and you do have leads puts you in a position where you may be able to test out more of an inbound approach. So posting content, you might want to look at paid marketing, but I still recommend outbound as if you don't have anything as a strategy, because it's very easy to dial up, turn off, turn on when you need it. Whereas inbound may take longer to do. And it also is dependent on, for example, things like SEO depends on what percentage of the market is actually looking. Whereas outbound depends on what percentage of the market you can serve and find. And the last one is if you do have control of your lead generation. Let's say you have a strategy that's working. Let's say you're doing paid marketing, or you have SEO, or you're doing search engine marketing. The question here now isn't which one of these should you do. It's, well, it really comes down to what is your cost of acquisition of your client, and do you think you can do better? So really, and also how scalable that solution is. So oftentimes I'll be meeting with potential clients on sales calls, and they're interested in LinkedIn marketing. They've seen our marketing material, they want to work with us. But I say, like, what are you currently doing? And they say, oh, we're doing this, we're getting leads for, I don't know, let's say $50 a lead, which is really good. Or the cost of acquisition might be $250 or even $1,000, all really good values. And I'll ask them, like, is this an approach? Can you scale this? Like, why, if you already have such a great cost per lead, why don't you just do more of it? Why are you even talking to me? Oftentimes, as the conversation progresses, it's actually not necessarily that much, or it's a case of they can't actually scale it. It's just, some things come in and it's very low cost, but there's no way to actually scale it. So if you have a low cost of acquisition or a low cost per lead and it's scalable, then I wouldn't be looking at anything else. I'd be looking to scale what you have and keeping your systems and processes incredibly simple. Really, that's what it comes down to. But if you are in a position where you can't scale it, or it's a high cost of acquisition, you think you can do better, or you have a team behind you and you have the resources to invest in other strategies, that's when you would actually start to look at other things. There is a benefit in risk mitigation around having other strategies working for you, so you're not just dependent on one. But if you are a small business, maybe there's a solo person and you don't have a team behind you, you're better off trying to go pro on one specifically and get it working well specifically before trying to do too many things. The biggest issue I see with a lot of small businesses when they're just getting started is they're trying to do too much. So where do we go from here? A lot of what we're going to be talking about is around outbound, because it's a very powerful strategy that fits in with everything, and it also works really well with inbound when not done particularly well. It's also what we did basically to get over $1 million a year just by focusing on outbound, and even just with a tiny bit of inbound. We're pretty inconsistent. So I'm going to teach what we know and what we've seen work. I'm not going to promote things that we haven't done, even though they could potentially be very good strategies. I'm going to be teaching from our experience. And I think the problem here is a lot of people get taught what's a powerful strategy, but not necessarily taking into account the actual resources available to small businesses. So we're going to be focusing heavily on LinkedIn outbound, because it is a powerful, low-cost strategy for most small businesses to start. It costs time, and you don't have to add advertising costs in as well. It's scalable, and we're going to be talking about how to do that. And then once we get this working, we can start talking about other ways to combine these other lead generation strategies in as well. All right, so now regardless of which strategy you choose, so like I said, we're going to be talking a lot in this series about LinkedIn outbound because it is such a dynamic thing, especially for small businesses, consultants, coaches, advisors, business service providers. This is a really powerful strategy. It's very dynamic for pretty much whatever stage you're at. If you're already doing well with another lead gen strategy, it's a really powerful one that you can add to the mix, mitigate your risk, and potentially get a lower cost per lead. If you're just getting started, it's a great way to build a reliable and repeatable lead gen system, regardless of how much money you have. It's just time dependent. So it's a really powerful strategy at any stage in the journey. And that's why I think it's such a powerful one for us to focus on specifically here. It's a great one for no matter what size business you're at. Now, regardless of what strategy you use, the thing you need to do within any of these strategies is have a way that you can build trust with your audience. So whether people are coming to you, whether they're finding you via SEO, via your content, or whether you're reaching out to them, what you need to do is essentially establish trust with that audience. And I say there's 4 key ways that you can really build that trust with your audience. And depending on, this is where we're going to touch on the strengths and gap analysis of your business, because depending on your business, the type, the industry, the market, it really depends on what you're going to want to highlight in order to help build that trust. All right, so I talk about this a lot in my previous videos, but I call it the 4 key ways that you can build trust with your audience. And so it really comes down to credibility. I hope I spelled that right. You're specializing or niching, value proposition, message to market, offer. And the last one, I'll call it branding or likability. Essentially your ability to stand out. So credibility really is, what's your credibility in your space? Have you got case studies? If you're a brand new business, chances are that you may have worked as an employee and actually provided your skills and helped big companies in your past. If you are essentially the business, you can still leverage that past credibility even though it wasn't necessarily your company that did it, because it's still you and you are essentially the business if it's a small business. If it's a bigger business, you want to lean heavier on things like case studies and testimonials and stuff like that. A lot of times I work with clients and they have great testimonials and case studies, but they're buried so deep within their website, they're buried deep in their LinkedIn profile, you have to go looking to find them. You want it, you're dealing with so little of people's attention when it comes to marketing that it really needs to be like slap you in the face, obvious, right there in front of you, what you want to show them and highlight for them. So think about, if you don't have any, but you know you can get them, get them. Make sure you reach out, ask your clients. These are really powerful ways to build that credibility. If you've worked with big brands, you see a lot of companies and websites doing this, is they show that the companies that they work with. So you're building your credibility by association with brands that they already know and like and trust. So big brands is a great way to build that credibility. And it's important to show, I'll highlight here, is that you don't need to do all of these. This is what I'm talking about. Depending on your business is depending on what things you want to highlight. So this is a good activity to help like list all the strengths that you can demonstrate and identify potential gaps, so you know what you need to get in order to make the next part of this task easier and more successful. So if you've got big brands that you can work with, go out and basically gather those up. Case studies, even things like if you do public speaking, you have a picture of you talking to a big audience, that's a great credibility builder as well, public speaking. Now, niching is basically helping people understand that you're an expert at what you do by focusing in more specifically on a specific area, a specific problem, or a specific industry or niche. And the power of this is that there's somewhat of a assumption that if that's all you do, then chances are you should be very good at it and you should understand that niche and the problems in that specific area more deeply. And so a lot of times we work with companies that don't necessarily want to niche their entire business or aren't ready to niche because they don't know what specific industry to niche on, or they're worried that there's not a big enough market there, which most times is pretty crazy. But what you can do is be niche in your specific campaigns. So if you have worked with a specific industry that you have gotten good results for, rather than reaching out to everyone or putting your marketing content out there for everyone or having landing pages on your website for everyone, start to think about ways that can be more specific and talk to a specific type of audience. That way, when the right people see it, there's an actual chance that they're going to pass that threshold of actual trust that's required in order to have a conversation and want to learn more. Generally, if you try to resonate with everyone, you're generally going to resonate weakly with everyone rather than strongly with a few people. And when you resonate weakly with everyone, you just don't make any progress. So think about, if you can niche, if you know there's specific industries that you can help or that you'd like to focus in on, that's a really powerful thing that you can do as well. Or start to think about industries you've worked with can help and would niche in on for specific campaigns. And once you have that confidence, perhaps you can adjust your business to be more niche. Otherwise, you can just do it on a campaign by campaign basis. So niching is a really powerful strategy. If you can do it either campaign or business wide, it's a great way to actually improve your chance of conversion from your marketing materials. So start to think some of the industries that you've helped and where you can add that value. Now, value prop, trying to think of the right way to describe this, but essentially having a strong offer or a strong value proposition means that you can get by with no credibility or even without niching. Although niching can sometimes fit into that offer, but it's essentially what's the promise, what's the timeline, and what's the risk mitigation. So if you can say, hey, we'll do this thing for you and we'll work completely free for the next 4 weeks. And if we don't double your production line efficiency over that 4 weeks, then you don't have to pay us a thing. So even without necessarily niching, or having any credibility in the space, if you have a strong offer, that's usually enough to get by and actually start to generate leads and clients. So there's some really great books. Alex Hormozi has a great book on $100 million offers that talks more about this. I recommend going deeper on this. This one is foundational really to doing really well with your marketing, and combining it with niching and credibility to help build more trust around your offer is a really great way to help as well. So start to think, what's your promised outcome? And because we're talking B2B, think, how can I connect this to money? Oftentimes clients say, I help businesses do this because they care more about this, or they want to help their employees. Ultimately, you need to help them connect it to them making more money or doing well in their job as fast as possible, because that's why businesses exist for the most part, is to make the money, and your job is to help highlight what you do and how that connects to them making more money, and what's that risk mitigation or chance that it is actually going to generate more money for them. Have a look at Alex Hormozi's book, $100 Million Offers. Great book, and it can help you with that as well. The last one I like to talk about, it's a bit obscure compared to the rest of these, is branding and likability. So if let's say you're posting content and people resonate with that content, they like you, they can essentially buy from you. I mean, you look at all these influencers on YouTube that are basically becoming the latest in celebrities and things like that. They're all getting basically, all the marketing companies are going to these influencers because people like and trust these guys. And so when they push a product or they promote a product, their audience actually buys it. So if you can find a way to, build loyalty and likability with a specific audience, you don't even necessarily need to have a strong offer or niche down or anything, or even any credibility in your space. If people like you, they'll potentially buy from you as well. So start to think about how you can stand out in your market. What can you do differently? What's new or nuanced or interesting or quirky about you that you can highlight that's going to make you actually resonate and be interesting with your market, so that, with your marketing material, you have a way to actually stand out and be likable with a specific audience. So I recommend writing down each of these 4 headings and just listing all the different things that you can do well in these, and potentially things that you might be able to do better. So if it's credibility, reach out to people to get more case studies, or build or put an action plan in place to say, when next project I start, I'm going to reach out. I'm going to say that part of the deal is that after 3 months, if we've done a good job, we're going to be asking you for a testimonial. Help prepare them for that conversation so that you have a better chance of starting to get these resources in place. It takes time, but if it was easy, everyone would do it. Everyone would be a millionaire. We wouldn't need to exist. So write all these down and start to think about what you can use in your own marketing mix to do a better job and build more trust with your audience. All right, so this all sounds good in theory. But what are some actual examples of this in practice? So Let's look at an example of one of our clients, Chris, who's a business coach. Now, he came to us with a obviously experience in lead generation himself, having been a business coach and helping a lot of businesses as well. But what he really, I guess, was lacking in terms of opportunities that he could have been taking advantage of was he wasn't leveraging his credibility enough. And this we see a lot with coaches. So he had over 30 years of experience, and he'd done a lot of experience in the IT space specifically. So rather than trying to be everything to everyone, we focused a lot of our campaigns. We built another number of campaigns, all industry specific, but most of our success came from the one where he had the most experience and where his professional background was as well in IT. So we tested a bunch of different industries, found out the IT one was the best, and then we leveraged his credibility in that space, so speaking to actual results. So let's say we reached out to someone on LinkedIn. We say, hey, my background is in this. I sold my company for $10 million, and I help companies double their revenue over a period of X, Y, Z. And then we put in examples of this in the past, so it helps build the credibility and trust. A really powerful strategy for experienced business coaches, and often one that they seem to lack launching straight into with their messaging as well. We also built a strong value proposition or offer, double your revenue over a certain period of time with a risk mitigation. And we didn't even need to focus on branding or likability in the end because all these other things were so strong. And that's the point I want to make here is you don't need to do all of these. You just need to get one at least, or as many as you can working well, such that it doesn't actually start to become too much work and you get diminishing returns. So if we started to do content, it may have worked, but it may have actually just added more work without a relative return on that effort. Let's look at another example of a leadership development coach. So that's, as opposed to a direct business coach that's more connected to revenue, business leadership is sort of lives more on the soft skills. And so it requires a different approach. Oftentimes, the big challenge here is driving urgency. So a lot of it really lives on building that credibility with your market and your experience in that space. And having a strong value proposition can help as well, obviously. But a lot of it comes down to credibility. Recommend niching if you can, because if you come across as a leadership development, and one of our clients did this in the blue collar space, it really helped increase his conversion because he stood out as someone who actually understood the blue collar industry versus someone who just did leadership development or leadership coaching in general. And for these types of things, I do also recommend the branding and likability and positioning yourself as a thought leader. And this is where content marketing can actually really help, because this is very much a time dependent thing. And you want to stay front of mind with these companies, so when they are actually thinking this is something we need to do, you're the obvious choice in who they come to. Whereas other things, let's say as an example of a new software product, you might just need to focus on a strong value prop because you're new, you don't have the credibility, you're not at big companies. Maybe you can niche and solve a specific problem, but having a strong value prop is all you really need, because you say, I solve this specific problem. Maybe you have a freemium model where people can get started for free and start to see the value. So you can start to see here where, depending on the type of business that you're actually running and what you actually have in your arsenal, depends on what you're going to focus on. And this is what a lot of what we do in the beginning with our clients really comes down to, is trying to understand what are their strengths, what are the weaknesses, what needs closing, what needs ignoring, and how do we go about building that strategy. So like I said, write these down, write what you have, and have a bit of a think about how people buy in your marketplace. Is it very much offer related, or is it very much, they look for the leader, the thought leader in that space, and come to you when the time is right? All right, so now we're at a point where you want to know, how do you actually get started? What do you want to do next? So it really fits into two sort of broader categories. You can either do this yourself, or you can hire someone to do it for you. So if you want to do it yourself, you're in the right place. Keep following along with the videos. We're going to be tracking and going through everything you need to set up your systems from scratch. If you want to hire someone, we're going to talk about, what you need to look for, when you would actually go about hiring someone, and things like that. So obviously, I guess the most obvious thing is you would hire someone when you actually have the funds to do it, or someone has provided the funds for you. So the advantage of hiring someone to do it is, of course, the speed. So you're paying for speed, you're paying for someone to actually get that proof of concept much faster for you as well. So the advantage of that is, you save a lot of time, of course, and you come at this knowing that if you're hiring the right person, that you're giving this the best chance or possible chance of success. So a lot of people try these things, and I've done it myself, is you have a bit of a half-assed attempt or what you think is necessarily a good attempt, but you really don't know what you don't know. And so you feel like the platform doesn't work, it doesn't work for your business, it's not a good strategy, when in reality, you just didn't know what you need to get started, and you don't give this the best chance to actually work. So working with an agency gives you that best chance of it actually working, or working out if it will or won't work. Sometimes finding out something doesn't work for your business is an important part to the step in order to work out what you need to do next. But for the most part, if it's the right company and you're working with the right agency, they should have a pretty good idea if it's going to work for you and be able to tell you that as well. My best advice around working with agencies is to find transparent agencies that share all the processes and strategies and don't try to hide anything. So we're a big believer in actually sharing everything that we do and even helping our clients bring that process in-house should they want to take over it at a later point in time. We just want to work with our clients so long as it makes sense to do so and so long as we're actually adding value. So you can go about hiring agencies. You can hire mid-sized agencies that specialize with small businesses like ourselves, larger agencies that specialize with big businesses. The challenge with that is if you're a small business, even though they can do a really good job, you tend to lack that economy of scale and you can't even generate or I guess deal with the lead volume in order to justify the spend that you need to go with them. The other end of the scale is you can go to platforms like Upwork and pay people to do it for you there. The problem is there's a lot of mess in the market and a lot of them are fairly new or less experienced. And so there are a bunch of different options, but just whichever one you go to, you just want to make sure that you're dealing with someone who has experience and is very transparent. And I like to think that's something that we do as an agency really well. Regardless of what you do though, the one thing I want everyone in this video to understand and be able to track and know within their business, and unfortunately it's not something that a lot of businesses do seem to know, is what is your cost of acquisition of a new client, whether that's cost in terms of how much does it cost you in your marketing efforts to acquire that client, or how much does it cost you in time, because that's a really important thing for these strategies that are more a time input. So if you want your time to be, let's say $1 million a year, you work backwards, it's roughly about $600 an hour, and it costs you like 3 hours to do it, you can very quickly see that it's cost you $1,500 to acquire that client. So you really want to understand what's your cost of acquisition and what's your customer lifetime value. Two really important figures. Customer lifetime value refers to, for the lifetime of your client, how much are they likely to spend on average? Now, sometimes I'll ask my clients what your average customer lifetime value is, and they'll tell me it varies. Of course it does. That's why it's an average. So I know it can vary a lot, and depending on who you're actually going after, but trying to get a good, clear understanding of, on average, what your client is worth to you is super important, because it means that when you know your lifetime value and you know your cost of acquisition, it's really just simple maths. Your cost of acquisition needs to be less than your customer lifetime value, because then you know how much you can actually spend in order to acquire clients. And when you know that, when you work with agencies or work with staff who are doing this for you, it makes your life easier, because they're either adding value and getting a return or you're not. So understanding these values are critical. No matter what you do, whether you're doing this yourself or you're hiring an agency, these are the two figures that you just need to understand. Cost of acquisition, customer lifetime value, because simple maths. One, you need to acquire clients for less than you're actually generating from those clients. Sounds simple, yet a lot of businesses really struggle with these figures. So if you just know that, then no matter what you do, you're gonna have a good idea of whether or not something is working for your business or not. All right, and the last thing I wanted to finish on is just a little thing around, I guess, your attitude around your marketing and your lead generation. So I found a lot of businesses really struggle with marketing because of misaligned expectations. So you need to understand what it's worth to your business and what it's worth to actually solve this problem. Remember that all these strategies actually do work. That's why they exist. They're not new things. They've all been proven to work in the past. And too often clients will blame the platforms or the process rather than looking at themselves. So I've been guilty of this myself in the past. I've poured 50K through trying to get Facebook advertising to work, only to throw in the towel and say Facebook sucks, Facebook doesn't work. I get it. Like, I've been there myself. So if you know the strategy works and you've seen it work for others in the space, then be prepared to strap in for the ride. All that matters is understanding what success looks like. This is why we talked about your cost of acquisition and your customer lifetime value. When you know these and you know what it's costing you to acquire a client, then it's very easy to understand what it looks like. So this is why we actually suggest 3 months when we're working with our clients, because businesses that come in and try it for the month, it's just like a race to the bottom, basically. This is why we're super selective with who we work with, because we know that you really need to be committed to making this work. And that's why our guarantee is centered around 3 months rather than 1, because you need to put in that time to get this to work. So now that we have a pretty good idea of what we need to focus on, some of our gaps, some of our strengths, some things that we need to actually focus on, we're going to be talking a little bit more now, getting a bit more into the actual detail and the tactics of how to build a trust building presence on LinkedIn specifically in the next video. So I hope you found that helpful. If you'd like to learn more about our services or working with us, head to b2bleads.com and book in a time with our team. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. All right, I hope you found that useful. As I mentioned at the start, there's a whole ton of other videos in this series. So if you're interested in checking them out, just click on the playlist that should be up on the screen right here.